In this episode, I'm tackling a complex but crucial topic. Whose side is HR on? This is a question that sparked debates and discussions for decades in the HR community. And as HR professionals, we often find ourselves walking a tightrope between advocating for employees and aligning with the organisation's interests. So, how do we balance these competing demands? Today, we'll dive into this topic by exploring the dual role of HR, sharing real-world examples, discussing perceptions from both sides, and offering strategies to help you strike the right balance. Welcome to Reimagining HR with Trina Sunday, the rule-breaking podcast where we challenge our thinking and our current people practices. This podcast is for time-poor HR teams and business leaders who are feeling the burn, lacking laughs, and not feeling the love. I'm Trina, your host, and I'm here to cut through the BS, explore different ways of thinking, and create high-impact HR functions. Because happier, healthier organisations are better for our people and our bottom line. So if you are keen to flip traditional HR on its head, hit the follow or subscribe button so you're the first to know when new episodes drop. I'm here to help and also to shake things up. So let's get started. Whose side are you even on, Trina? I've heard that before. Or being accused of just bowing down to employees and whatever they want because they're so precious. Or employees flipping the coin and telling me that I'm all about the organisation and that I don't care. This is the balance that we are striking all the time in HR. So whose side are we on? Let's start, I guess, by understanding the dual role of HR, because it's not as clear-cut as that, right? Traditionally, HR is seen as a strategic partner to the business, ensuring alignment with what the company goals are, helping them to manage risks and really driving organisational performance. But at the same time, HR is also expected to be the voice of the employees, advocating for their rights, promoting fairness and ensuring a positive work environment. And it's this duality that creates an inherent tension. For example, when handling complaints or conducting performance reviews, HR must balance transparency with confidentiality, fairness with loyalty, and support with then objectivity. It's always a balance. And according to a recent Gartner report, 70% of HR professionals, 70% feel conflicted about where their true loyalty should lie. But the reality is the role of HR is not black and white. It's a spectrum where we must constantly navigate shades of grey. You might be intellectually stimulated by the fact there's actually more than 100 shades of grey. So don't aim for 50 shades. Let's not do things by halves. I digress. But let's take a closer look at how these dual responsibilities create a can't-win scenario for HR. So from the perspective of employees, HR is often viewed as being too aligned with management, seen primarily as a tool for enforcing company policies and protecting the organisation's interests. And employees may feel that HR should be more of an advocate for them, addressing their concerns, protecting their rights, and fostering a supportive work environment. They might expect HR to challenge unfair practices or management decisions that negatively impact them. All very reasonable expectations. On the other hand, managers and leaders often see HR's role very differently. They may feel that HR should focus on driving business outcomes, managing risks, and ensuring that the organisation remains legally compliant, but also competitive. So when HR takes a stand for employees, managers can perceive it as HR being a roadblock to productivity or even undermining their authority. And a recent survey by CIPD in the UK showed that 60% of managers, so the majority of managers, believe that HR's primary role is to serve the business's strategic interests, not necessarily to act as an employee advocate. And I'd agree, right? If we are there to have a positive impact, we should be helping to achieve business goals. But how do we do it without upsetting everybody in the process? This conflicting perception, it creates a no-win situation for HR. No matter what decisions HR makes, it risks being seen as biased by one side or the other. If HR sides with the employee, it risks being seen by management as not aligned with those business goals. But if HR sides with the employer, we risk being viewed by employees as untrustworthy or not supportive. It's a constant balancing act, right? And it can leave HR professionals feeling like they are absolutely caught in the middle and unable to please anyone, quite frankly, not fully anyway. HR professionals I've worked with have also been quite resolute, to be honest, in what side they see themselves on. So some will talk about it being a continuum and depending and striking the balance. There are other HR professionals that I've worked with, both as consulting clients and coaching clients, who do believe they have a side. I'm here for the employees, Trina. I'm here for the employees. And there's others that are absolutely very clear in terms of what their obligations and that being driven by the organisation. They have a side. But I also do have those HR leaders, as I said, who I've worked with who inherently feel caught in the middle. And so I've been reflecting on a few of those kind of stories from clients that I've been working with and, to try and bring these challenges to life. One of them, at a large financial services firm, HR was tasked with managing a significant layoff due to market downturns in the economy. Employees were blindsided by the layoffs and they felt betrayed by HR. They believed that HR should have advocated for alternatives like voluntary redundancy or reducing hours. But at the same time, management criticised HR for delaying the layoffs to provide additional outplacement support and counselling for affected employees to help them navigate their next career steps. And management viewed that delay as damaging the company's bottom line. So HR was caught between supporting employee morale and well-being and adhering to the leadership team's cost-cutting directives. And in the end, both sides felt left down and HR's credibility suffered. A change in leadership and some very strategic partnering has since shifted that perception, I'm pleased to say. There's also some startup growing pains. So I was reflecting on one of my HR coaching clients who was working with a growing tech startup. And they faced a situation where a senior developer complained about the CEO's behaviour during meetings, and they were describing it as aggressive and intimidating. Surely not, right? And employees expected HR to intervene, for HR to be the ones to step in and hold that CEO accountable. However, the CEO saw the complaints as undermining their authority, and they expected HR to manage the disgruntled employee out of the organisation. HR and my client, they tried to mediate. They were encouraging the CEO to adjust their communication style while also supporting the employee with coaching and mentoring and some techniques to try and help in that relationship with the CEO. But unfortunately, both parties were dissatisfied. The CEO felt unsupported by my client in HR, while the employee felt that HR hadn't done enough to protect their rights. And this led to a broader perception among staff that HR was ineffective and too concerned with pleasing leadership. And given that the CEO was a founder and inherently the business was an extension of him, for my coaching client, they ended up moving on from that startup to a more mature tech company. And that company has an appetite for HR being a core part of the business, and my client's doing really well there. One of my associate consultants who works in the consulting side of Reimagine HR, they were sharing an example from when she was working with a manufacturing company. So HR had initiated a diversity and inclusion program to address systemic biases in promotion practices. However, while employees were enthusiastic, some managers resisted. They believed the initiative slowed down their operational efficiency, and they felt that HR was imposing unnecessary restrictions on their decision-making processes. Driving quotas, wanting to look good, focused on all this diversity stuff while we had work to do. But employees, on the other hand, felt HR wasn't doing enough to hold the managers accountable for their biases in their behaviour and their decisions. And in trying to balance these interests, HR faced criticism from both sides. And despite their efforts to promote a fair and inclusive environment, the perception among both groups was that HR had not effectively fulfilled its role. Should HR have been the one to initiate that diversity and inclusion program? I'm not sure that was the right approach, but therein lies the work that I do with my coaching clients when you're trying to unpack all the contributing factors that can be contributing to the imbalance. But what these examples highlight is how in trying to balance conflicting interests, HR often finds itself at the center of dissatisfaction from both sides. It's not just about picking a side. It's about finding a way to address both perspectives fairly and effectively. And to me, if we don't do that and we're lost in the middle, this is where our image problem comes from. If we are not navigating the balance, and it's a balance, it's a balancing act on any given day. But that duality at the end of the day and trying to reach satisfaction for both the employer and the employee, that's the part that strengthens our brand. When people can see us advocating in a fair and effective way to get mutually beneficial outcomes. Sounds good, right? Sounds so simple, but it's not. So how do we balance these roles effectively? And the key, and it's probably not going to surprise you, but it lies in transparency and building trust. So HR need to communicate clearly with both management and employees about expectations, processes, and outcomes. And we don't do it very well. And I have some clients that talk about, but we have SLAs, service level agreements with our customers to manage their expectations. I don't know any SLA that helps you create satisfaction with a client experience, with your client being both management and employees in your organization. I've never seen an SLA that's done that. And if you have one, I would love to see it. But it is about conversations and clarity around what it is that can be expected, what the processes are that are used to help drive outcomes in the business, and what does good look like. Because being transparent, it helps to mitigate misunderstandings and it builds trust on both sides. And when we mess up, which we will, we are humans, hopefully we've put enough deposits in the trust bank that one withdrawal will still have us in the black, rather than our stakeholders seeing red. HR should also act as a mediator. So this involves listening actively, trying to understand what's happening on both sides of the fence and facilitating really constructive conversations. It's all in the dialogue. And so to do that, though, we need to be equipped with really strong negotiation and conflict resolution skills to navigate what can only be described as delicate situations. There's a lot at stake for people depending on who you're talking to on any given day about something that's going to impact them, both managers and employees. But many I speak to are petrified by the M word, but done well, mediation can enable conflicting parties to get on the same page, right? In a respectful and a safe way, because they've kind of got Switzerland there in the middle, providing some neutrality. And this is the challenge. Being neutral and not having an opinion also does not help our brand. And so in setting those expectations and managers and employees really understanding what we bring to the table, it's the value add in resolving the conflicting interests, which is the power that we can bring and the impact that we have. So we can move faster through those points of disagreement. We also, I guess, kind of need to establish a clear, I'm not sure what I would call this, like a clear code of ethics, maybe. Reserve the right to change that in a moment because I'm freestyling. That outlines responsibilities to both employees and the organisation. And I guess I don't mean in a fluffy way, but a toolkit for ourselves, if nothing else. We need to understand what the rules of engagement are from a HR perspective and what our obligations are. Like ethically and morally, what are our obligations? Yes, legally, that's always in there. But there's a whole range of other considerations. You can't just leave it to chance. Like we need a plan of attack. You don't walk a tightrope without a balancing stick. So why not use the tools that can help us to maintain balance? And in my experience, trying to map out what this balance and tightrope is between employee and employer advocacy is really good to do in advance and talk to people in advance where they can hear you from the logical side of their brain and not while they're upset because they're in a moment where they're trying to get an outcome and they feel like you're not on their side. And the code, that I don't know what I'm going to call, can help clarify HR's role, right? It helps to set realistic expectations for both parties. And then organisations that have a well-defined code of ethics or conflict resolution policies, they tend to have high levels of trust and better employee satisfaction generally. Where there's high trust, there's typically high satisfaction or higher satisfaction. So to sum up, I guess, balancing employee and employer advocacy is one of the most challenging aspects of being a HR professional. I see you, team. I see you and I hear you, and I have these conversations every week with clients that I'm consulting into or coaching clients that are working with me one-on-one or in small groups. The tightrope, the balancing act, that I can't win conversations every week. And so I was thinking about, by building trust and fostering communication and understanding what our standards are, we can effectively navigate the tension and create a more balanced work environment. But there's another layer to this challenge, and that's the blurred line with HR's involvement or over-involvement, I might say, in people leadership and manager responsibilities. So when HR becomes overly involved in day-to-day people leadership, it can inadvertently step into a space that's traditionally and rightfully the domain of managers. And this can add to the existing tensions because managers might feel undermined, and then employees might perceive HR as overstepping or reach out to us in future to resolve problems only to be referred back to their manager and feel like we've abandoned them. So it's critical for HR to support and coach managers in their people leadership roles rather than taking over their responsibilities, right? And I know that most people listening to this would know that conceptually, but it's harder to maintain those boundaries, I guess, in reality, in our execution. But therein lies the code, the toolkit, the thing that delineates the responsibilities, because that's going to help reduce tension and clarify the expectations. And that will allow us in HR to focus on strategic alignment and employee advocacy more effectively. We have to remember the goal is not to choose sides, but it is to find solutions that support both the organisation's goals and employee wellbeing while respecting the distinct roles and responsibilities of management and HR. What if walking the line between employee and employer advocacy was more effortless? Imagine that. Thanks for tuning in and leaning in to this week's episode as we look to reimagine how we show up for our people, organisations and community. Reach out to us via our website at reimaginehr.com.au with your HR horror stories or suggestions of people you'd love to hear from or topics you want to explore. It's all about people, purpose and impact, and we are here for all of it. Until next time, take care, team.